Hello, my name is Ron Edmonds. Today our topic is Ernest Thompson Seton in the 1927 Woodcraft expedition. The Woodcraft expedition was jointly sponsored by the Woodcraft League of America, the American Museum of Natural History, and the Staten Island Museum in New York. The goals of the expedition were to revisit places and people Seton had met on earlier Western expeditions, study sign language and various forms of native dance, and to gather material for books, articles, and lectures. The itinerary began in Bismarck, North Dakota, moved to Standing Rock, and then through the South Dakota Badlands, Cheyenne, Wyoming, through Colorado, and into New Mexico. Leaders of the expedition were Ernest Thompson Seton and Clyde Fisher. Clyde Fisher was a curator with the American Museum of Natural History in New York City, with varying responsibilities over the years. He was curator of public instruction at the time, was heavily involved with photography and motion picture film. He would later go on to lead the Hayden Planetarium at the American Museum. Three other team members were from the New York area, including Seton's assistant, Julia Buttry, Carol Stryker from the Staten Island Museum, and Helen Saunders, a Brooklyn High School biology teacher. Three expedition members were added in Bismarck: George Will, an archaeologist and businessman, Clell Gannon, an artist, and Russell Reed of the North Dakota Historical Society. Seton gave several of his popular lectures in Bismarck before they embarked on the expedition. Standing Rock was partitioned from the Great Sioux Reservation in 1890. It consists of a total of 3,572 square miles in North Dakota and South Dakota. The reservation takes its name from a sacred rock formation that resembles a woman with a child on her back. The expedition's first stop on the Standing Rock Reservation was to visit the Standing Rock Agency, where the United States Indian Agent was based in Fort Yates, North Dakota. Upon arriving at Standing Rock, Seton led a somber pilgrimage to the grave of Sitting Bull. At Standing Rock, Seton reconnected with an old friend, Aaron McGaffey Beatty. Beatty was a former Episcopal priest who had become a lawyer and judge and advocate for Indian rights. When the time came for the feast that had been arranged, members of the tribe gathered from all corners of the reservation. It was a festive event. Campers brought teepees to set up, and they dined in a communal style. After dinner, dances were held in the Dancing Lodge of Two Shields. Both men and women participated in the dancing, and they also invited the members of the expedition to participate along with them. One of the most disturbing things that Seton discovered during this visit was that the Indian Agent had prohibited any Indian under the age of 40 from participating in the dancing festivities as part of the attempt to assimilate Indians into the white culture. Nevertheless, there were many dancers that participated. Seton was able to learn and practice Indian sign talk. Here he is conversing with Gray Eagle, who was the oldest and greatest sign talker of all at Standing Rock. This iconic picture was taken by Clyde Fisher and has been republished many times. During the evening, Seton was summoned for a special ceremony called Hunkapi, which means the making of relatives. During the ceremony, Tom Frosted, also known as Chief White Bear, gave Seton the name Matoska, which means white bear. Seton responded with a speech that he had carefully practiced and gave in Lakota. In a surprise, Philip Bullhead gave Clyde Fisher the name Madokokipopi, which means afraid of bear. He did not give a speech. With the visit to Standing Rock concluded, the expedition took off by automobile through the Badlands, and as they did through most of the trip, they were doing car camping. Wherever they went, Seton expressed his dismay with the changes that had taken place in the West, including the destruction of habitat and the absence of buffalo and other game which had once been abundant. Can you even imagine what it would be like to go camping with Ernest Thompson Seton and have him tell stories every night by the campfire? The group stopped in Cheyenne, Wyoming during Cheyenne Frontier Days that year and visited with a number of Native Americans. Next stop was at Estes Park, Colorado, the gateway to Rocky Mountain National Park. Here they used Long's Peak Inn as a base of operation, and some members of the group, including Clyde Fisher, climbed Long's Peak. After leaving Rocky Mountain National Park, they traveled to Denver. In Denver, Seton was a guest of J.J. Hall, a wealthy oil man, and stayed at his home, where they also conducted in the gardens a Woodcraft council for members of the community. This house is currently the home of United States Senator John Hickenlooper of Colorado, who was previously governor, and the house served as a part-time governor's mansion during his time as governor. I'm in the Denver area. They toured the sites of the city, and one of the sites they went to was the grave of Buffalo Bill on Lookout Mountain west of Denver. Buffalo Bill had been a friend of Seton's and Clyde Fisher's. After leaving Denver, they traveled south through Colorado Springs and then across Raton Pass into New Mexico. As with other cities, The party's visit to Santa Fe, New Mexico was highly anticipated. Once again, the members of the expedition took the time to see the sights in Santa Fe and also to reconnect with their old acquaintances there. Seaton checked in with his good friend Edgar Hewitt, director of the Museum of New Mexico and a major force in early 20th century Santa Fe. He also visited at the home of his friend, the author Mary Austin. He visited several of his artist friends, including Sheldon Parsons, who was the director of the Museum of New Mexico's Art Museum. The group then launched their visit to many of the pueblos in New Mexico and Arizona. At Santa Clara, they visited with Charles Loomis and Santiago Naranjo, the governor of Santa Clara. In the pueblos, they were also able to observe the making of pottery. Seaton was able to spend a good bit of time with Charles Loomis, which was a good thing because Loomis was seriously ill with cancer already at the time of this visit and would pass away the next year. When they visited the iconic pueblo of Taos, not only were they able to observe dances and see the pueblo, they were also able to do some other things. Seaton was able to visit with two artists with whom he had studied in Paris at the Académie Julian, Bert Gear Phillips and Ernest Blumenschein, who were founding members of the Taos Art Colony. The group also visited the grave of Kit Carson on the edge of town. They then resumed their tour of various pueblos in New Mexico. One interesting place they visited was El Morro, also known as Inscription Rock, in western New Mexico. Members of the team were able to visit the Hubble Trading Post in Arizona, where many of them purchased rugs and pots and other curios and had them shipped home. The group arrived in Gallup in time to attend the Gallup Intertribal Ceremonial. Upon their arrival back in Santa Fe, the expedition team was honored with a special dinner at the La Fonda Hotel. Edgar Hewitt took Seaton to visit the Los Alamos Ranch School, which would later become the site of the Manhattan Project. As usual, Seaton gave a number of speeches while he was in Santa Fe, including to Rotary and Kiwanis. He also spoke to a large gathering of teachers in the area. The final Grand Woodcraft Council was planned to be held on the courtyard of the New Mexico Museum of Art, part of the Museum of New Mexico, across the street from the Palace of the Governors. There were over 200 people present for the Woodcraft Council, including the Governor of New Mexico, Edgar Hewitt, local community leaders, and many children. Seaton and his group left Santa Fe by train, departing from the train station at Lamy, New Mexico. He traveled first to Chicago and then back to New York and Greenwich. After returning to New York, Clyde Fisher assembled a film from the clips that he had recorded at various locations along the trip. That film was called Camping Among the Indians. In addition, he developed a film on Indian sign talk using film taken at Standing Rock. Unfortunately, the film on sign talk is lost. In addition to the film that was used for group presentations, clips were available to patrons visiting the museum through special projector machines. Julia Buttry, later to become Julia Seaton, used material from the expedition in preparing her books, The Rhythm of the Red Man and The Pulse of the Pueblo. Both Julia and Ernest Thompson Seton used material from the trip in their lectures that they gave in many locations in the United States and in Europe. Seton was deeply influenced by his experiences on the expedition. Preservation of Native American culture and protection of Native American rights became a primary focus. He relocated to Santa Fe in 1930 and developed Seton Village and built Seton Castle. He married Julia Buttry in 1935. Seton died at Seton Castle in 1946. This concludes our overview of the Woodcraft trip of 1927. Access to the full webinar series on the Woodcraft trip is available to members of the Ernest Thompson Seton Institute.